The Cursed Skull of Wardley Hall. There's been a building on the site of Salford's Wardley Hall since at least the year 1292. The current hall dates predominantly to around the year 1500, although it was extensively renovated and restored in 1894. Wardley Hall is currently the official residence for the Roman Catholic Bishop of Salford. It also played a key role in the life and death of Ambrose Barlow. He was a Roman Catholic priest who, in 1641, found himself in a very difficult spot. King Charles I had just signed a decree outlawing Catholicism and giving all practicing priests just 1 month to leave the country or face arrest and trial for treason. At this point in his life, Ambrose was 56 years old and a very ill man, having recently suffered a stroke. But he was a proud Catholic and refused to flee. On the 10th of April 1641, which happened to be Easter Sunday, Ambrose was leading his congregation of around 150 at Morley's Hall in Ashley in what was an illegal mass. The Vicar of Lee, a man of the Church of England faith, had heard rumblings of the Catholic gathering and marched his well-armed congregation of almost 500 to arrest them. If you think of a rowdy mob armed with pitchforks, you wouldn't be far wrong. Father Ambrose, fearing the worst for his congregation, offered the vicar a deal. They could arrest him, and he would happily stand trial for treason if, and only if, they let his congregation go unpunished. The vicar quickly agreed to these terms, and Father Ambrose was placed in custody and taken to Lancaster Castle. On September 8th, 1641, Father Ambrose was found guilty of treason, and just 2 days later, he was executed. He was hung, drawn, and quartered. After that, his remains were then boiled in oil. His head was placed outside on a pike. A few days later, an ear-piercing screech began coming from the head. No matter how much they tried, the guards could not make it stop. One of the guards, secretly a Catholic, spirited the skull away and passed it to a fellow loyal Catholic, Francis Downes, the Lord of Wardley Hall, who was also Father Ambrose's cousin. Wardley Hall was where both Francis Downes and Ambrose Barlow had grown up, and as the children, the two were more like brothers than cousins. It was only once the skull crossed the property line and entered Wardley Hall, passing into the care of Francis Downes, that the screeching stopped. The skull, it would appear, was home. In the centuries that followed, the skull was stolen several times, and each time the skull was removed from the grounds of Wardley Hall, the screeching began again. This ensured that the skull was always swiftly returned. The skull, it would appear, was cursed. It was Francis Downes who, upon the coronation of King Charles II, an event which also heralded the return of religious freedom to England, gifted Wardley Hall to his beloved Catholic Church. To this day it is still the official residence of the standing Bishop of Salford. On the 25th of October 1970, Pope Paul VI canonised Father Ambrose, thus making him Saint Ambrose. St. Ambrose's skull is still bricked up in an alcove in one of the stairwells of Wardley Hall. To remove it is said to trigger the curse and the skull screech. It isn't the only part of Father Ambrose to survive. His jawbone is in the Church of St. Ambrose of Milan, in the Barlow Moor area of Manchester. He has one hand at Sambrook Abbey in North Yorkshire, whilst the other hand somehow managed to make it across the Atlantic. It's currently located inside Mount Angle Abbey in Oregon.